Good morning, Salibonani. We are back again today with a very interesting topic around the issues of leadership. We want to talk about politics and how women have been lagging behind for years in Zimbabwe. I have with me in studio Madam Toffa. She's going to tell us about her work and challenge us to take these positions. Welcome to the program, Toffa. You can introduce yourself and tell us more about the work that you've been doing.
Good morning, Ska. Very good morning, Zimbabwe. Yes, my name is Jasmine Toffa, Member of Parliament for Bulawayo Jikelele. I am a beneficiary of proportional representation, better known to everyone as PR. That is how I got to be a Member of Parliament. My political party had to garner 17.5% votes to be able to second my name. Yes.
That's very interesting. You've done a lot of work for Zimbabwe, for the women's constituency. So if you could just share briefly some of the successes that you've done, and I had said earlier that you tell us briefly about how you got to be where you are today as a woman in Zimbabwe.
Okay, first of all, for me to become a parliamentarian was not something I ever thought of or ever dreamt of or ever wanted to be. I was asked to become a member or to become a candidate in my first time that I ever contested was in 2008. Or maybe better still, let me start from the very beginning, how I got involved in politics. In 1999, the country's economical situation was going down, the political situation was going down, there was degradation of a lot of facilities, institutions, and what have you. So I kept saying, you know, these people are destroying the country. And one morning I just got up and I said, these people are destroying the country. What about you? What are you doing? What is your country? Where is your country? And at that time I was looking also as a parent, very worried about my 3 sons. I have 3 sons. And what their future would be like, because I could see that there were no more jobs coming up. Young people had no opportunities. So I decided to go and participate in the referendum. That was my first port of call. So I went into town and looked for the offices where this activity was taking place from. I had no idea about politics, so I just wanted to be part of the process. When I found the offices, I then asked them, I heard there's a new political party that's been formed, you know, where can I find the offices? And they directed me. And I went and I bought my first card for the MDC then. And I think it was card number 20, if I'm correct. And that is how I started. And the first branch was formed at my house, 98 Marimba Road. Wow. Yes. After buying my membership card and leaving them my address, they actually looked for me. And the gentleman that came, he's now late. He used to live in Burnside somewhere. I can't remember the road, but I can actually see his house. Yeah, and he came to my house and then spoke to me and asked if I didn't mind the branch being formed at my house, and that's how I started. So I became a branch member, then a branch secretary, and then I moved from branch to ward. And I didn't even understand what branch, ward, district, all those things meant. And I just started activism work. And it was almost like living a double life. I was married, I had sons, and I was doing all this activism, the graffiti, jumping into trucks. And sometimes I wonder how I did, but that's how I started. But for me to become a candidate, it was one of the structure members, a young man who was the same age as my second son, and his name was Fortune Mlalazi. And he said to me, Toffa, when I be candidate. I said, no, you're crazy, I can't. But he encouraged me and walked me through the whole process and, you know, was stuck He was stuck by my side. He used to get me up at 3, 4 in the morning on the phone talking, and that's how I started. And then, of course, we had our primary elections, and I wasn't aware. I was following everything by the book, because you're not allowed to vote by, you're not allowed to, pick up candidates and do things. You have to follow what our constitution says. And that is how I started off. So I went through the primary election and I won against, I think it was 3 candidates. And I remember one of them was Senator Sikhangele Khumalo. She wasn't a senator then. Yes. And that is how I contested. And I enjoyed my my campaign. I was trying to campaign, differently, American style, with driving around the supermarkets and, the malls, and with the speaker talking to the people, and also trying to be different, talking to members of like ZANU-PF, and at the time MDCT, because I was in the MDC led by Welshman Ngwenya at the time. And yes, and I think for a first time unknown, I did very well. I came very close to winning against Tabita Khumalo. Okay. Yeah, and I lost, but I didn't stop. I continued working because I enjoyed it. I was very passionate. I carried on, working on the ground. Then to cut a long story short, come my second attempt in 2013, I was contesting in Bulawayo East again, and that is when the proportional representation was introduced in the new constitution, where 60 seats nationwide were set aside for women empowerment. And my Secretary General then, Priscilla Mshonga, spoke to us as women to say, look, if you are approached by the men to say, no, you stand in the PR, because that's what they were trying to do, to say you women have got PR, leave the first past the post seats for us men. She says you must bargain and make sure, unless they put you on number 1, you refuse. So the party at the time felt that the candidate that should stand in that seat was David Coltart, because he was a brand, and it would give us more votes, which would then give us as a party an opportunity to put more women on the PR list after garnering more votes. Because if you have 17.5%, you put in 1. It's 35% for you to have 2, and so on and so forth. So Dave Coltart phoned me, and he says, this is what the party has decided. And I have spoken to the party and told them on condition that Jasmine must have the number 1 position on PR, because he felt that it was not fair for me just to be removed from that position, because I had not stopped working. And he told me that. So I said, well, that is what I would have asked for as well. So he says, please make sure that that's what they will do. If they don't do that, then I'm not going to take the position. So my negotiation was made even easier by a man that understood and that women also do matter, and they need to be in political spaces. And that is how I became the PR number 1, despite everything else that you'll hear. I've been hearing that women sleep for positions, but I didn't. I negotiated mine, and in fact, I earned it because of the work that I did. And I remember that we were expecting as a party to win no less than all the 12 seats in Bulawayo. And we lost all the 12 seats in Bulawayo. So when we lost the 12 seats, I knew that I wasn't in. And it was very heartbreaking because we had worked our butts off. And then I got a call from my mother congratulating me. And I said, no, I we can't. I couldn't have won because we didn't win all the seats. And she says, no, malume uzwile radio ekhaya. And I said, no, ma, it can't be. What hayi sibili wonke mobuzona ufonile uthe ungusenator. So I said, no, I didn't go in as a senator. And on radio they had announced me as senator. And then I got a call, of course, from Fortune. And he says, congrats, Toffa asungenile. So I said, no, it's not true. And he says, no, it is. And then I got an anonymous call, and somebody called me and said, look, you don't know me, congratulations. We've watched you work, and you deserve to win. That is when I believed that I was in. But it was very painful to go in not knowing, without the team, because we had all worked as a team. So that was my first term in Parliament. And I was happy that at the time in Met South, Priscilla Mshonga also got in. And as a senator in Bulawayo, Senator Kumalo and Joyce Ndlovu from Met South got in. So it was 4 women. And when we got to Parliament, the Constitution clearly states that our Standing Rules and Orders Committee, which is the highest decision-making body in Parliament, must reflect the complexion of Parliament, meaning all the political parties. So they had to choose a chief whip. And the chief whip, the main opposition political party has a chief whip and a deputy chief whip. And then the other political parties have a representative chief whip. And of course, the person that we knew was to take the position was Priscilla. And Priscilla said, no, Toffa, you take that position. So I said, no, I can't, because I don't have experience, and And she says, no, I've been there, done that, and this is an opportunity for you to be exposed and for you to learn, how Parliament runs. You're not going to do anything much because we are only 4 of us in Parliament. So yes, I was then made the chief whip of the party, and my first meeting was the most daunting and frightening meeting ever, because there was the Speaker of Parliament, and there was the Leader of Government Business and Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, and it was the then Minister Mnangagwa. And then I had the Thokozani Kupes and Nelson Chamisa when he was not president. Of course, I can use his name because he wasn't president then. And all the other Minister of Finance. And so I was sitting there. It was quite a frightening experience, but I quietly just studied the ropes and learnt a lot. That is how I began or understood, because of the advantage of being in Standing Rules and Orders. I was also made, Priscilla allowed me to be the SADC PF representative. She was our Secretary General, and for me, she is an example of women that let other women have opportunities, grow. And so I was a member of the SADC Parliamentary Forum. And as a member of the SADC Parliamentary Forum, I was fortunate enough to be one of the people that crafted the model law on the eradication of child marriages. It was a very interesting process with all the other SADC countries, where we then would come back, impart the information in the form of a report to Parliament, which is then debated, and we then would go out into our communities and talk about the model law on the eradication of marriages, educating the communities, the community leaders, the chiefs, the churches, getting their buy-in, as inscribed in our Constitution 141, that you don't bring in a law or introduce a law without the participation of the citizens of the country. That is one of the achievements I feel that I did. And also one of the low-hanging fruit that I took advantage of, because I looked at what was expected of me as a member of parliament. And I also looked at what the people out there perceived to be the role of a member of parliament. And when I looked at what the roles are of members of parliament, one which is legislative oversight and representation, I realized that the people out there didn't know what the role of an MP was. And even myself, before going to parliament, had a totally different idea of what was expected of a member of parliament. So being a PR member of parliament, remember each constituency has its own MP. So whenever I was invited to any report back meeting, I would take advantage, when given an opportunity to speak, to educate the people and let them know what the roles of a member of parliament are, what the roles of a councillor are, what the roles of government are. I would also educate the people why they would elect or should elect someone. And also the fact that they as a people have the right to access a member of parliament, a councillor, or even government. And even the fact that they have the right to go to parliament. So it was amazing to see how shocked people would be. I would print out business cards every week, 200, and I would give out to people, and people would call me and talk to me. So looking at what was available and possible in parliament with regards to my having an impact on the constituency of women, or the constituency of Ubulawayo, I realized that even though we did budgets for different social amenities and industry and what have you, the fact that we've done a budget doesn't necessarily mean that money will be disbursed and whatever we want would be implemented. I looked at the fact that most people in Zimbabwe, and Bulawayo Matabele land in particular, had no documentation. They had no birth certificates. And for me, that is a fundamental right and foundation of any human being and member of society. And I decided to go into looking at how we can do birth certificates. In fact, this came about when I was approached by some parents in Mahachula, at Mahachula Primary School, when the children had been thrown out of school for not paying school fees. And I took the issue up to the Minister of Education in Parliament, asking why children were being chucked out of school for not paying school fees, yet the Constitution clearly states that education is free and that parents are the ones that the government or the schools should deal with, but allow children to continue with school. And whilst I was talking to the parents, one of them said, look, my child in school, because I managed to negotiate for my child to go into school without a birth certificate. Please, Honorable Toffa, can you help me get a birth certificate for my child? And I said, okay, let me deal with this issue. We'll come and meet next Wednesday because we won't be going to Parliament. I'll be coming back with a response. But can you organize in your community, in Mahachula, Ubutikona, whoever doesn't have e-birth certificate, so I don't have to come back for one person and then come back for another. When I got back on the appointed day with the response from Parliament, I was shocked. The yard was full. I had over 40 children with parents being allowed birth certificates at all, with various reasons. Some because of, historical background of their family homes being burnt down during the Gukurahundi era. Others because the hospitals have had refused them the right to get the birth records because the mothers or the parents could not afford to pay hospital fees. And they would hold back on the birth records, meaning the child would then not have a birth certificate. And some because the parent herself had no birth record. So it creates a vicious cycle. The reasons were many. So I went back to Parliament on Wednesday. I asked, the minister, and from there, we then organized. I said, okay, when the minister said it is the child's right, it's been infringed upon, the hospitals have no right to do that, and we asked them to write letters. So to cut a long story short, I organized the families or parents that had children with no birth certificates, and I went to Central Hospital, Impilo Hospital, Mzilikazi Clinic, wherever those hospitals were, for them to organize a desk for the birth records and birth certificates, because that facility is there at the hospitals. And we went and we got these the documentation, and from there it grew from strength to strength. I then went to the extent of approaching the First Lady after she had just become the First Lady. Remember, she was a Member of Parliament, Auxilia Mnangagwa, Her Excellency Auxilia Mnangagwa. And I spoke to an NGO here in Bulawayo, Trinity. They deal with birth certificates and IDs for the disadvantaged in Bulawayo and Matabeleland. I actually took one of the members of staff to Harare. I paid for a bus fare. I organized her a hotel room. The First Lady was kind enough to give me, she afforded me 3 hours of her time and listened to what I had to say. My main prayer was for her to please be, to table a motion, because I was looking at my objective and I knew that having the influence of the First Lady would help. And she agreed. She tabled the motion, and unfortunately by the time the motion came to be to pass in Parliament, she was no longer an MP, but she seconded Honorable Ziva. I think she's late now. May her soul rest in peace. She did the motion, and I seconded the motion. It was tweaked and changed. The title was changed, but it still allowed me an opportunity to say what it is that I wanted to say. So the main thing was for me was to advocate for amnesty for the whole country to have the right to access to documentation, because after having been to the First Lady's office and having an interview on Studio 7, I got calls from all over the country, not only Matabeleland. I even got calls from overseas because I had given out my phone number. So was to advocate for amnesty for everyone, although the Attorney General's office at the time felt that, or it was said by the security department that it was a security risk to get everyone documented, because you would then be documenting even fugitives and criminals from other countries. But I was of a different opinion, that it was better to document even those criminals, because then you would have record of exactly how many people you had in the country, and if anybody committed a crime, it would be easy to access them. And secondly, the other prayer, or part of the prayer, was that most of the women that sought or that went outside the country to seek work were economical refugees. when they came back with children that they would have had either carried from when they went out to look for jobs or whilst they were outside looking for jobs, they were being made to pay $50 to allow that child to get a birth certificate or a birth record or documentation. So I asked that is be done away with. It's one thing that motion dealt with. We achieved that, and that was scrapped. So now women can access their children's birth certificates without having to pay that $50. There was also the issue that women had to go back to the border and so on and so forth. So that motion, I feel, helped. It is one of the things that I achieved. And I feel that if I have to leave Parliament today, as long as we have achieved this one issue of birth certificates or documentation, I think the government would have done well, and I would have achieved something that I feel is very, very important. And I see that there is a documentation blitz that's coming up on the 1st of April, and we are going to be doing, according to the minister, up to at least 2 million documents for citizens of Zimbabwe.
You have done quite a lot of work, Honorable, and well done to yourself and everyone who believed in you when you started. In the recent by-elections, we recorded 16 women out of, I think it's around 118, 116 there. So with the work that you've put in as women, why are we still having low numbers in leadership positions?
Okay, let me answer your question backwards, starting off with this particular by-election. Remember that this by-election is a correction, or is a by-election that is being done because of recalls.
Yeah.
So it would have been very difficult to then, because if somebody is recalled, whether they're male or female, they are the ones that are going to contest. Well, in the instance of the political party that I come from, where the recalls were done. So if men were recalled, they then stood again, because it would be only right for them to finish their term unless for some other reason they are not seen to be fit. So that one you can't, we couldn't have changed the numbers at all. I think it would have been a bit difficult. But why do we have such few numbers? I think, or in fact, I know that we need, as a government or as a parliament, to deal with this issue, because our constitution clearly states that there must be a 50-50 gender equality. I am also aware, having been a member of the Standing Rules and Orders in Parliament, that whenever commissions are being picked, it is the obligation of Standing Rules and Orders to make sure that there is 50-50 in line with the Constitution of Zimbabwe. So I think that we need to correct this by starting off at the political party level, where all political parties must submit. This is the plea and the cry that we have as women members of Parliament and Women's Caucus of Parliament, that our political parties must submit a 50-50 lineup of representatives. And we're also saying that ZEC should not accept any list that comes short of that. So that is one way that we can help with women representation. If we look at the proportional representation, yes, it was a very good initiative because it gave women an opportunity whilst they were maybe aligned, while the constitution was being aligned or being worked towards. But it has done an injustice for the women MPs. I'm speaking for myself. I'm not saying a total injustice. I've been given an opportunity. And from that opportunity, I have been able to stand as a woman representative. But I don't have, or women in the proportional representation positions do not have the same powers and opportunities as other members of parliament. They do not have, for example, the CDF, which I'm not a great fan of, but every other MP has got CDF. They don't control a particular constituency. You have to report, or you have to work with the other MPs and not be seen to be tramping on their toes or be seen to be wanting to take over their position. And also the PR women are not protected. You know, I believe, like the Constitution talks about, I think it's in section 56, it has provides for a strong framework for the protection and promotion of the rights of women, children, and girls. Women are not protected in that position. I'll give you a typical example now. There's political battles taking place. Who do they, when they're doing their recalls, who do they recall? They recall the PR, because the PR is easy to replace. You don't have to have an election. So we are talking about empowering women and showing women out there that women have equal opportunities, that women should not be abused. This is a form of abuse, because a woman is just going to be outrooted at any time and replaced at any time. And now the woman PR has to be at the mercy of the leadership. You have to beg, or you have to try and make sure that you're towing the right line not to be recalled. So I believe that because the proportional representation is there in existence in the Constitution, the women need to be protected. Or else, how are women going to be encouraged to go into positions? And also another thing why we're not having a lot of women in politics or leadership positions, it is because we do not have women in decision-making bodies, in government, in the political parties. That is a mischief that needs to be corrected.
Thank you so much, Honorable, for coming to the show today. I learned a lot. I enjoyed talking to you thoroughly. And you've managed to challenge everyone and bust myths around the participation of women in leadership positions, especially in politics. Thank you for watching the show. We hope for a change. We hope for more women rushing and grabbing those seats in politics,